Captain Deho was flying his cargo ship through space when everything went wrong. The red planet below him was covered in dust storms that never stopped. His ship was old but strong. He had been flying it for many years through dangerous places in the galaxy. Deho looked at his control panel and saw something strange. The numbers were jumping around like crazy. Something was out there that should not be there. He looked through his front window and saw it. A strange silver ship was falling through the red sky. Blue flames were coming from its back end. The alien ship looked like nothing Deho had ever seen before. It was smooth and shiny like liquid metal. The surface seemed to move and change as he watched it. This was definitely not a human ship. It was crashing fast and would hit the ground in just a few minutes. Most pilots would have just watched and kept flying. Finding crashed ships could make you rich if you got there first. But helping during a crash was against many rules. Deho watched the alien ship fall toward certain death and made a choice that would change his life forever. He turned his ship hard to follow the falling vessel. His engines were old, but he had made them stronger over the years. The cargo ship was not meant for rescue work, but Deho had added many special things to it. Medical room, better air systems, strong shields. These were tools for a man who worked in the forgotten parts of space where no help ever came. The alien ship hit the desert ground with a huge crash. The impact shook Deho's teeth in his head. By the time he landed his ship nearby, poisonous air was already getting inside the crashed vessel through small cracks. He grabbed his emergency kit and put on his protective suit. He knew he only had minutes before whatever was inside that ship would die. The crash site smelled terrible. It was like electricity mixed with something organic that made his skin feel wrong. Deho walked carefully toward the wreck with his scanner in his hand. The machine showed one life form inside. It was weak but still alive. The alien hull had melted when it crashed, making a hole just big enough for a person to crawl through. Inside the alien ship, everything was weird. The walls glowed with veins of light and the air itself seemed to shimmer with energy. In the center of what might have been the control room, Deho found her. The alien girl was hanging in a web of crystal fibers. She was unconscious and bleeding a silver liquid that pooled under her like mercury. She looked almost human but was clearly something else. Her skin had a faint blue glow and she had small gill-like openings along her neck that moved as she breathed. Most amazing were her eyes, which opened as Deho came closer. They showed colors that swirled and changed in ways he had never seen before. Fear appeared on her alien face when she saw him, but it quickly changed to something else. Maybe gratitude or maybe just acceptance. She spoke in a musical language that his translator could not understand, but her meaning was clear. She was dying and she knew it. Deho did not wait. He turned on his suit's safety systems and carefully pulled her out of the crystal web. The alien girl was lighter than he expected. Her bones felt hollow like a bird's. As he carried her toward his ship, her strange silver blood kept leaking through his gloves. It felt warm and electric against his skin. His ship's medical room was made for humans, but Deho had seen enough alien species to figure things out. He put her in the isolation chamber and started running every scan his equipment could do. Her body was amazingly complex with parts that were both organic and crystal-like. This seemed impossible by normal understanding of life. As the medical machines worked to save her, Deho found himself staring at her face. There was an otherworldly quality to her features. She had an almost perfect symmetry that suggested either genetic perfection or artificial enhancement. When she opened her eyes again, now fully awake, he felt something change in his chest, something he had not felt in the long, lonely years since leaving Earth's military service. She tried to speak again, and this time his translator caught pieces of it, words that sounded like thanks mixed with what might have been her name. The sounds flowed like water over stone, musical and complex. Deho found himself leaning closer to listen. He was drawn by a voice that seemed to vibrate in frequencies beyond normal hearing. Outside his ship, the planet's two suns began to set, painting the desert in shades of orange and gold. Inside the medical room, two beings from different worlds looked at each other across an impossible gap of species and circumstance. Neither could have predicted that this moment would be the beginning of something that would change the balance of power in their part of the galaxy. The alien girl's wounds were healing, faster than should have been possible. The silver blood was clotting and turning into a substance that looked like living metal. Her gill openings had adapted to breathing the ship's air, and the glowing patterns on her skin had grown brighter. They pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. Daeho realized he was no longer dealing with a simple rescue. Whatever species this girl belonged to, they had technology and biology that would be worth killing for. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, someone was probably already looking for her. The girl's strange blood had stopped flowing and was forming crystal-like patches on her skin. Her breathing had become steady and strong. The medical scanners showed that her body was not just healing, but actually improving. She was adapting to the new environment in ways that seemed to violate the basic laws of biology. As the hours passed, Daeho watched over her recovery and wondered what he had gotten himself into. He had saved the life of an alien being whose very existence could start wars between star systems. Her technology could revolutionize human civilization or destroy it completely. But when she opened her eyes and looked at him with gratitude that needed no translation, Daeho knew that whatever came next, he would face it with her. 3 days passed before Nari could speak in words that Daeho's translator could properly interpret. Her name, she explained, meant lily in her language, though the concept didn't translate perfectly. Her people were called the Veltar, and they were dying. She sat in the ship's small common area, wrapped in one of Daeho's spare jackets that hung loose on her delicate frame. The bioluminescent patterns on her skin had dimmed to a soft blue glow, no longer the brilliant display they had been when he first found her. Her silver blood had been replaced by something closer to purple, a sign her translator told him indicated recovery and adaptation. "My ship was not meant for this system," Nari explained, her voice carrying harmonics that made the air itself seem to vibrate. "I was fleeing the Dominion fleets when my navigation core malfunctioned. Your people call them the hegemony, I believe." Daeho knew the hegemony by reputation, a militant alliance of species that had been expanding aggressively through the Outer Rim territories for the past decade. The coalition had managed to maintain an uneasy peace with them, but rumors suggested that was about to change. "The Veltar territories fell 6 months ago," Nari continued, her strange eyes reflecting depths of loss that transcended language barriers. "We were not warriors. Our technology was focused on harmony, on integration with our environment. When the Dominion came with their planet killers and neural suppressors, we had no defense." She showed him images through her ship's partially functional data core, cities that grew like coral reefs, their crystalline structures breathing with the rhythm of living worlds. Veltar children playing in gardens where the plants sang in response to their touch. All of it now reduced to ash and memory. "How many escaped?" Daeho asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "Perhaps 1,000 scattered across the galaxy. The Dominion wanted our biotechnology, our ability to interface directly with living systems. Those they captured became..." She paused, searching for words that didn't exist in any human language. "Tools, living computers. Their consciousness trapped, but their abilities harvested." The implications hit Daeho like a physical blow. If the hegemony had access to Veltar biotechnology, their expansion wouldn't stop at the Rim territories. The coalition worlds, Earth itself, would be next, and they would have no more chance than the Veltar had. Over the following days, as they traveled toward the nearest coalition outpost, Daeho found himself drawn into long conversations with Nari. She was fascinated by human technology, by their crude but effective approach to manipulating their environment through force rather than integration. In return, she showed him glimpses of Veltar science that seemed more like art. She could interface directly with his ship's computer systems, her touch turning cold metal into something responsive and alive. Under her influence, the soul's pride began operating with an efficiency that bordered on impossible. Engine systems that had been failing for years suddenly hummed with perfect harmony. Navigation computers that had required constant recalibration now seemed to anticipate his needs. "Your species approaches technology like a weapon," Nari observed one evening as they shared a meal in the common area. She had adapted to human food with surprising ease, though she needed to supplement it with trace minerals that her biology extracted directly from the ship's metal surfaces. "Sometimes weapons are necessary," Daeho replied, thinking of the hegemony fleets and the fate of her people. "Yes," she agreed, and her skin's glow shifted to a deeper blue. "I am beginning to understand this. My people believed that harmony was possible with all things, that any conflict could be resolved through communication and understanding. The Dominion taught us otherwise." There was something in her voice that made Daeho look up from his meal. The musical quality was still there, but underneath it was a note of steel that hadn't been present before. Nari was changing. adapting not just to his ship's atmosphere but to concepts that her species had never needed to consider. "What will you do when we reach the Coalition station?" he asked. "I do not know. Seek asylum, perhaps. Warn your people about what is coming. The Dominion will not stop with the Rim territories. They have tasted victory and they hunger for more." "And after that?" Nari was quiet for a long moment, her strange eyes reflecting the stars visible through the viewport. "I have been thinking about that. My people are scattered, broken, without hope, but we are not extinct. Not yet." Deho felt something shift in the air between them, a tension that had been building since she first opened her eyes in his medical bay. She was alien, impossible, beautiful in ways that human concepts of beauty couldn't capture, and she was looking at him with an expression that needed no translation. "You saved my life," she said simply. "Among the Veltar, such a debt creates bonds that transcend individual existence. But this feels like something more." The words hung between them like a bridge across an impossible gulf. Deho knew he should pull back, maintain the distance that protocol and common sense demanded. She was the last representative of a dying species, and he was just a cargo hauler trying to make a living in the dark spaces between worlds. Instead, he reached across the table and touched her hand. Her skin was warm, and the bioluminescent patterns beneath its surface brightened at the contact. For a moment, they sat in silence, two beings from different worlds acknowledging something that had no name in any language. Outside the ship, space stretched endlessly in all directions, filled with dangers they could barely imagine. The hegemony fleets were out there somewhere, spreading their dominion across the galaxy like a plague. Earth and the Coalition worlds were unprepared for what was coming. But in the small common area of the Soul's Pride, as Kepler's twin suns faded to distant points of light, Daiho and Nari began to plan something that neither of their species had ever attempted before. Not just resistance, but a new kind of alliance that would combine human determination with Veltar biotechnology. The galaxy was about to discover that some bonds, once formed, could not be broken by any force in the universe. Station Omega-7 hung in the void like a massive steel flower, its rotating sections creating artificial gravity for the thousands of beings who called it home. As the Soul's Pride approached the docking bay, Deho could see Coalition patrol ships moving in defensive formations around the station's perimeter. The military presence was heavier than usual, suggesting that rumors of hegemony expansion had reached official channels. Nari stood beside him at the bridge viewport, her appearance carefully concealed beneath human clothing and a hood that shadowed her luminescent features. They had agreed that revealing her true nature immediately would likely result in her being detained for interrogation, possibly indefinitely. Better to establish contact with Coalition command through proper channels first. "Your people build their structures like fortresses," Nari observed, studying the station's angular architecture. "Everything designed to resist and endure rather than adapt and flow." "It's kept us alive so far," Deho replied, though he was beginning to see human engineering through her eyes. The station did look brutal compared to the organic curves of Veltar cities he had seen in her memories. Docking procedures were routine until they reached the customs checkpoint. Commander Hyunwoo Park, a career military officer with graying temples and suspicious eyes, seemed to take particular interest in Deho's passenger manifest. The medical bay's bioscanners had detected anomalous readings during their approach, and protocol demanded investigation. "Cargo haulers don't typically carry passengers," Captain Kim, Park said, reviewing the data on his tablet. "Especially passengers with unknown medical conditions that are triggering our contamination protocols." "She's a refugee," Deho explained, sticking to the story they had prepared. "Picked her up from a wreck in the Kepler system. Her homeworld was destroyed in the recent conflicts." Park's expression didn't change, but Deho caught the slight narrowing of his eyes. "Which homeworld specifically?" "We've had reports of several planetary bombardments in that sector." Before Deho could answer, Nari stepped forward and lowered her hood. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Her alien features drew gasps from the security personnel, while her bioluminescent skin patterns began to pulse in response to the stress of exposure. Commander Park's hand moved instinctively toward his sidearm before training took over. "My name is Nari of the Veltar," she said, her voice carrying that musical quality that made the air itself resonate. "I request asylum under Coalition law and offer information vital to your survival." The next several hours passed in a blur of medical examinations, security briefings, and increasingly urgent communications with Coalition Command. Nari submitted to every test with patient dignity, though Deho could see the strain it put on her. Each procedure, each scan was designed for human physiology and caused her obvious discomfort. Admiral So-Young Lee arrived on the station within 6 hours, her reputation preceding her. She was known throughout the coalition as a brilliant strategist and one of the few commanders who had successfully resisted hegemony incursions in the Rim territories. Her presence suggested that someone in command was taking Nari's warning seriously. The briefing room was sterile and cold, designed to intimidate rather than comfort. Nari sat at the center of a semicircle of coalition officers, her alien features highlighted by the harsh lighting. Despite the intimidating setup, she spoke with calm authority about the fall of the Veltar territories and the true scope of hegemony capabilities. Your intelligence estimates are dangerously conservative, she told the assembled officers. The dominion you call the hegemony has absorbed 17 different species over the past 3 years. Each conquest has added new capabilities to their military structure. Bio-neural computers from the Veltar, quantum shielding from the Ethereal Collective, plasma weapons from the war clans of Zerion. Admiral Lee leaned forward, her expression grim. How do we know this information is accurate? No offense intended, but you're the first Veltar any of us have encountered. We have no way to verify your claims. Nari's response was to interface directly with the room's computer systems. Her hand touched the conference table's data port, and suddenly every screen in the room came alive with tactical data. Fleet movements, battle recordings, detailed schematics of hegemony weapons technology that shouldn't have existed in any coalition database. I carry the memory cores of 12 Veltar ships, Nari explained as the officers stared in amazement at the intelligence windfall before them. Everything we learned about Dominion capabilities before our worlds fell. Consider it a gift and proof of my intentions. Deho watched the faces around the table as they absorbed the implications. The hegemony wasn't just another aggressive species seeking territory. They were builders of empire, systematically absorbing the unique capabilities of each species they conquered and incorporating those abilities into an ever-growing military machine. What do you want in return? Admiral Lee asked, though her tone suggested she already suspected the answer. An alliance, Nari replied simply. Humanity has something the Dominion has not yet encountered. Your species fights like wounded predators, refusing to yield even when victory seems impossible. Combined with Veltar biotechnology, that determination might be enough to stop them. The room fell silent as the weight of her words settled over the assembled officers. They were being asked to form an alliance with a species they had just learned existed, to fight an enemy whose capabilities far exceeded their own. It was the kind of desperate gamble that military careers were destroyed on. There's another factor to consider, Commander Park interjected, his voice carefully neutral. Our scans indicate that Miss Nari has already begun interfacing with civilian technology. The biointegration readings from Captain Kim's ship suggest extensive modification of its systems. All eyes turned to Deho, and he felt the weight of their suspicion. She helped optimize my ship's performance during our journey here. Nothing more. The improvements to your vessel's efficiency are remarkable, Admiral Lee said, consulting her tablet. Engine output increased by 30%. Navigation accuracy improved beyond manufacturer specifications. Life support systems operating at theoretical maximum efficiency, all while reducing overall power consumption. Nari's skin patterns shifted to a deeper blue, a sign of resolve that Deho had learned to recognize. This is what Alliance could offer your species. Not just weapons or tactics, but fundamental improvements to every aspect of your technology. Ships that think, weapons that adapt, defenses that grow stronger with each attack they repel. The implications were staggering. If human technology could be enhanced to that degree, the coalition might actually stand a chance against hegemony forces. But the risks were equally enormous. Allowing an alien species to interface directly with their most sensitive systems would require a level of trust that went against every protocol and tradition in coalition doctrine. Admiral Lee stood and walked to the viewport, staring out at the patrol ships moving in their endless defensive patterns. How long do we have before the hegemony arrives in force? 6 months, Nari replied without hesitation. Perhaps 8 if they encounter resistance in the systems between here and their current positions. But they will come, Admiral. The Dominion has tasted victory and they hunger for more. The room remained silent as each officer contemplated the choice before them. Accept Nari's offer and risk everything on an untested alliance with an alien species, or continue preparing for war using conventional methods that had already proven inadequate against hegemony forces. Deho found himself studying Nari's profile as she waited for their decision. She had risked everything by revealing her true nature and capabilities to these strangers. If they chose to reject her offer, she would likely spend the rest of her life in coalition custody, her knowledge extracted through interrogation rather than cooperation. But as he watched the play of light across her luminescent features, he realized that she had already made her choice long before entering this room. She would stand with humanity against the hegemony, not because of any debt or obligation, but because she had found something among them that her own people had lacked, the will to fight impossible odds and refuse to yield, even when extinction seemed certain. 2 weeks later, Deho found himself standing in the center of Coalition Fleet Command's most classified research facility. The underground complex on Titan Base stretched for kilometers beneath the moon's frozen surface, housing experimental weapons projects and prototype vessels that existed nowhere in official records. Admiral Lee had chosen this location for the first formal test of human Veltar integration, far from prying eyes and potential saboteurs. Nari moved through the facility like a living sensor, her enhanced perception cataloging details that human instruments couldn't detect. The sterile corridors and harsh lighting that characterized Coalition military architecture seemed to physically pain her, but she endured it with the same quiet dignity she had shown throughout the interrogation process. The base commander isn't happy about this, Deho told her as they walked toward the testing chamber.
Half the research staff thinks you're a hegemony spy.
And the other half thinks you're going to accidentally destroy their equipment. Both concerns are understandable, Nari replied, her bioluminescent patterns dim in the artificial light. My people would have been equally suspicious of outsiders interfacing with our sacred technologies. Trust must be earned gradually. The testing chamber housed a decommissioned Coalition frigate, its systems stripped down to basic functionality for safety reasons. If something went wrong during the integration process, the damage would be contained to a single obsolete vessel rather than threatening active military assets. Dr. Jaemin Cho, the facility's chief engineer, waited for them with barely concealed skepticism written across his weathered features. I've been working with Coalition technology for 23 years, Dr. Cho announced without preamble. I've seen every innovation, every breakthrough, every miracle cure that was supposed to revolutionize our capabilities. Most of them ended up killing more of our people than they saved. Nari approached the frigate's main console with reverent care, her alien fingers tracing the lines of human engineering with something approaching affection. Your people build things to last, she observed. This vessel is nearly 40 years old, yet its core systems remain functional. Veltar ships were grown rather than built, beautiful but fragile. When they died, they could not be repaired. She placed her hand against the primary interface port, and immediately the chamber filled with a low harmonic vibration that seemed to emanate from the ship itself. Status displays that had been dark for months suddenly flickered to life, showing system diagnostics that scrolled past faster than human eyes could follow. Remarkable, Dr. Cho murmured, his skepticism momentarily forgotten as he watched the frigate's systems awaken under Nari's touch. The bioneural pathways are forming connections that shouldn't be possible with this hardware architecture. Deho felt a familiar sensation as he watched Nari work. The same mixture of awe and attraction that had been growing stronger since their first meeting. There was something hypnotic about the way she interfaced with human technology, transforming cold metal and circuits into something that seemed almost alive. The frigate's engines began cycling through startup sequences that the engineers had thought impossible. Plasma conduits that had been operating at 60% efficiency suddenly showed optimal flow patterns. Navigation computers that had required constant recalibration now responded with precision that exceeded manufacturer specifications. The integration is proceeding faster than anticipated, Nari reported, though her voice carried undertones of strain. Your technology is more adaptable than I expected. The ship is learning to work with my neural patterns rather than simply accepting commands. Admiral Lee, who had been observing from the control booth, activated the chamber's communication system. "How long can you maintain the connection?" "Indefinitely with proper biosupport systems," Nari replied. "But that is not the goal. The ship needs to learn these patterns so that human crews can operate the enhanced systems without direct Veltar interface. What happened next would be debated in classified reports for years afterward." Nari's connection with the frigate's systems suddenly deepened, her bioluminescent patterns flaring to brilliant intensity as data flowed between organic and artificial intelligence. The ship's hull began to resonate with the same harmonic frequency that emanated from her skin, creating a symphony that touched frequencies beyond normal human hearing. For a brief moment, the frigate was no longer just a collection of metal and circuits. It became something alive, aware, capable of thought and adaptation. Its weapon systems calibrated themselves for optimal efficiency. Its shields modified their frequency patterns to better resist known hegemony weapons. Its engines achieved thrust ratios that violated conventional physics. Then Nari collapsed. Deho was moving before her knees hit the deck, catching her as she fell and feeling the electric tingle of her bioluminescent skin against his hands. Her normal blue glow had faded to barely visible flickers, and her breathing was shallow and rapid. "Medical team to testing Chamber 7. Admiral Lee's voice echoed through the facility's communication system. Dr. Cho was running diagnostics on the frigate's systems, his earlier skepticism replaced by something approaching religious awe. "The integration patterns have been preserved in the ship's memory cores," he reported. "Every modification, every enhancement stored at the quantum level. The vessel can now operate these systems independently." The medical team that arrived was led by Dr. Hyejin Wang, a specialist in xenobiology who had been studying Nari's physiology since her arrival at the station. Her examination was swift but thorough, scanner readings confirming what Deho had feared. "Severe neural exhaustion," Dr. Wang reported. "The biointegration process drew more energy than her system could safely provide. She needs immediate metabolic support and at least 48 hours of complete rest." As they transported Nari to the medical bay, Deho found himself walking beside her stretcher, unwilling to leave her side. The test had been a success beyond anyone's expectations, proving that human Veltar integration could work on a practical level. But the cost to Nari had been enormous, and the implications were troubling. "She nearly killed herself to make this work," he said to Admiral Lee as they stood outside the medical bay. "The question is whether she would be willing to do it again." Lee replied, her expression grim. "Because if we're going to implement this technology fleet-wide, we'll need hundreds of integration sessions. And she's the only Veltar we have." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. They had found a way to level the playing field against the hegemony, but it required Nari to sacrifice her health and possibly her life repeatedly. It was the kind of impossible choice that wars demanded, weighing the survival of billions against the well-being of one individual. Later that evening, as Nari recovered in the medical bay's biosupport chamber, Deho sat beside her and watched the slow restoration of her bioluminescent patterns. When she finally opened her eyes, the first thing she saw was his face, and she smiled with an expression that transcended the boundaries between their species. "The integration was successful," she said, her voice weak but determined. "I felt the ship learning, adapting, becoming something new. Your technology and mine working together as they were meant to." "At what cost?" Deho asked. "You nearly died in there." Nari's hand found his, her touch warm and electric. "My people are extinct, Deho. Our worlds are ash, our cities are ruins, our children will never sing the old songs. If my death can prevent the same fate from befalling your species, then it is a price worth paying." Outside the medical bay, the classified research continued. Engineers studied the frigate's enhanced systems, trying to understand principles that seemed to border on magic. Military strategists calculated how many ships they could upgrade before the hegemony arrived. Politicians debated the ethics of asking an alien refugee to sacrifice her life for humanity's survival. But in the quiet of the medical bay, two beings from different worlds sat together in the soft glow of healing light and planned a future that neither of their species had ever imagined. A future where love could bridge the gap between the stars, and where the impossible might just be possible after all. 3 months into the integration program, Nari had successfully enhanced 47 coalition vessels, each session pushing her closer to complete neural collapse. The modified ships performed beyond all expectations, their hybrid systems giving human crews capabilities that bordered on the supernatural, but the cost was becoming impossible to ignore. Deho found her in the observation deck of Titan Base, staring out at the gas giant's swirling storms. Her bioluminescent patterns had dimmed to barely visible threads beneath her translucent skin, and her movements carried the careful precision of someone conserving every ounce of available energy. "Dr. Wang says you missed your metabolic therapy session again," he said, settling beside her on the bench that overlooked the vast panorama of space. "There are 12 more ships scheduled for integration this week," Nari replied without turning away from the viewport. "The Hegemony advanced scouts have been detected in the outer systems. We are running out of time." Deho had been dreading this conversation for weeks. The military commanders were pushing for accelerated integration schedules, demanding more enhancements despite the obvious toll it was taking on Nari's health. Admiral Lee had been sympathetic but firm. The survival of human civilization took precedence over individual concerns. "You're killing yourself," he said bluntly. "And for what?" "Even with 47 enhanced ships, we're still outnumbered 1,000 to 1 when the main Hegemony fleet arrives." Nari finally turned to look at him, and he was shocked by the changes in her features. The ethereal beauty that had first captivated him was being consumed from within, burned away by the constant demands of biointegration. Yet her strange eyes still held that same depth of determination that had emerged during their first conversations. "Do you know what my name means in the old Veltar language?" she asked. "Not Lily, as I told you before. That was a simplification for human understanding. Nari means the one who bridges, a person who connects separate things and makes them whole." She stood and walked to the viewport, placing her hand against the transparent aluminum surface. "My entire species was destroyed because we could not imagine a universe where harmony was impossible. We believed that all conflicts could be resolved through understanding and cooperation. The Dominion taught us otherwise, but they taught us too late. That doesn't mean you have to sacrifice yourself for our mistakes." "Your mistakes?" Nari laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Humanity's greatest strength is not your weapons or your technology. It is your refusal to accept defeat even when defeat is inevitable. You fight hopeless battles not because you believe you can win, but because you believe the fight itself has meaning." She turned back to face him, and he saw something in her expression that made his heart race. Love, yes, but also a kind of fierce joy that seemed to illuminate her from within. "I have found my meaning, Deho, not just in helping your species survive, but in becoming part of something larger than myself. The integration process is not just about enhancing your ships, it is about creating something new, a synthesis of human determination and Veltar harmony that neither species could achieve alone." Before he could respond, the base's alert system activated, filling the observation deck with flashing red lights. Admiral Lee's voice echoed through the communication system, tense with urgency. "All personnel to battle stations. Hegemony scout fleet detected entering the system. Estimated time to contact 6 hours." The next few hours passed in a controlled frenzy of preparation. The 47 enhanced ships formed the core of the Coalition Defense Fleet, their hybrid systems providing capabilities that the Hegemony scouts had never encountered before. Nari insisted on joining the fleet aboard the Soul's Pride, which had been extensively modified to serve as a command and control vessel. Deho found her in the ship's biointegration chamber, surrounded by crystalline interfaces that connected her directly to the entire fleet's nervous system. The strain of coordinating 47 enhanced vessels simultaneously was enormous, but she bore it with the same quiet dignity she had shown throughout their ordeal. "The Hegemony ships are not like those that destroyed my homeworld," she reported as the enemy fleet approached. "These are scouts, fast and lightly armed, designed for reconnaissance rather than conquest. But they carry something else. Something that makes my skin crawl with revulsion." On the tactical display, the Hegemony vessels appeared as angular shadows against the starfield, their hulls seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. As they drew closer, the enhanced coalition ships began detecting energy signatures that defied conventional analysis. "Bio-neural processors," Nari whispered, her voice filled with horrified recognition. "They have Veltar survivors aboard those ships, their consciousness trapped and enslaved to serve as living computers. I can feel their agony across the void." The battle that followed would be remembered as the first successful human resistance to hegemony forces. The enhanced coalition ships moved with unprecedented coordination, their hybrid systems allowing them to anticipate and counter enemy tactics faster than should have been possible. Plasma cannons that adapted their frequency in real time, shields that learned from each impact, engines that provided thrust vectors that violated known physics. But the true horror of the engagement was revealed when they captured one of the damaged hegemony scouts. In its bioneural core, they found 3 Veltar survivors, their bodies integrated into the ship's computer system so completely that separating them would mean death. Their minds were intact but imprisoned, forced to serve their captors while retaining full awareness of their situation. Nari's reaction to seeing her people in such a state was unlike anything Deho had witnessed before. Her bioluminescent patterns flared to blinding intensity, and for a moment the entire fleet's communication systems resonated with harmonics that spoke of rage beyond human comprehension. "This is what the Dominion does to those they capture," she said, her musical voice carrying undertones of steel. "They do not simply kill. They transform the living into tools, preserving consciousness to maximize suffering. This is the fate that awaits your species if they are not stopped." That night, as the fleet regrouped and analyzed the intelligence gathered from the captured scout, Nari made a decision that would change everything. She came to Deho's quarters carrying a crystalline device that pulsed with the same rhythm as her heartbeat. "This is a bioneural matrix from my ship," she explained, settling beside him on his narrow bunk. "It contains the complete patterns of my consciousness, everything that makes me who I am. If something happens to me during the coming battles, you can use this to preserve at least part of what we have built together." Deho took the device, feeling its weight both physical and metaphorical. "You're talking about death." "I am talking about love," Nari corrected, moving closer until her luminescent skin cast them both in soft blue light. "Among the Veltar, true love means accepting that consciousness can transcend individual existence. What we have created together, this bond between our species, it is larger than either of us alone." They made love that night with a desperation born of impending loss, 2 beings from different worlds finding solace in each other as the galaxy burned around them. Her alien touch was electric against his skin, her musical voice whispering endearments in languages that predated human civilization. When morning came, they lay together watching the stars through his small viewport, knowing that the main hegemony fleet would arrive within days. The enhanced coalition vessels had proven their worth in the scout engagement, but the coming battle would test their new capabilities against odds that even human stubbornness might not be able to overcome. "Whatever happens," Nari said, her hand tracing patterns of light across his chest, "promise me that you will remember what we learned together. That harmony and determination can coexist, that love can bridge any gap, that some things are worth fighting for even when victory seems impossible." Deho promised, not knowing that within 72 hours he would be called upon to honor that promise in ways he could never have imagined. The hegemony main fleet dropped out of hyperspace like a plague of locusts, their massive vessels blotting out entire sections of the starfield. Admiral Lee's tactical display showed impossible numbers. 3,000 warships, each one larger and more heavily armed than anything in the coalition arsenal. The enhanced human fleet numbered less than 50 vessels, and despite their hybrid capabilities, the mathematics of the engagement were brutally clear. Nari stood in the biointegration chamber of the Soul's Pride, her body connected to the fleet's neural network through crystalline interfaces that pulsed with the rhythm of her failing heartbeat. The strain of coordinating enhanced systems across the entire coalition force was destroying her cellular structure at the molecular level, but she maintained the connection with unwavering determination. "Hegemony formation analysis complete," she reported, her voice carried throughout the fleet by harmonic frequencies that made the very hulls of the ships resonate.
They are deploying standard Dominion tactics. Overwhelming firepower applied to destroy resistance quickly and completely.
They do not expect organized opposition. Deho monitored her vital signs from the command bridge, watching helplessly as her bioluminescent patterns flickered like dying stars. Dr. Wang had been clear in her prognosis. Nari had perhaps 2 hours before complete neural collapse, maybe less if she pushed the integration beyond current levels. "Fleet command to all vessels," Admiral Lee's voice echoed across the tactical network. "Weapons free. Show them what happens when they threaten human space. The battle began with a coordinated strike that demonstrated the full potential of human-Veltar integration. The enhanced coalition ships moved as a single organism, their hybrid systems allowing for tactical coordination that bordered on telepathic. Plasma weapons that adapted their frequency to penetrate hegemony shields, navigation systems that predicted enemy movements with supernatural accuracy, defensive grids that learned from each incoming attack. For the first hour, it seemed possible that the impossible might actually happen. The coalition force struck like a surgical instrument, targeting command ships and communication nodes with precision that left the hegemony fleet reeling. Enemy vessels that had seemed invincible began falling to weapons that adapted faster than their defense systems could compensate. But numbers eventually began to tell. For every hegemony ship destroyed, 2 more took its position. The enhanced coalition vessels were performing miracles, but miracles had limits when faced with overwhelming force. "Hull breach on Deck 7, came the report from the Soul's Pride's damage control officer. Plasma fire spreading through the dorsal sections. Deho felt the ship shudder under enemy fire, its enhanced systems working desperately to maintain structural integrity. In the bio-integration chamber, Nari's connection to the fleet was becoming increasingly unstable as her body began to fail. "I can give you more," she whispered, her words barely audible above the ship's emergency alarms. "There is a deeper level of integration, one that my people discovered in our final hours. But the cost—" "No," Deho said firmly, abandoning his post to kneel beside her in the chamber. "I won't let you kill yourself for this." Nari opened her eyes and he saw depths of love and determination that transcended the boundaries between their species. "Do you remember what I told you about the meaning of my name? I am the bridge, Deho. This is what I was born to do." Before he could stop her, she activated the final integration protocol. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Nari's consciousness exploded outward through the fleet's neural network, her life force burning like a supernova as it merged completely with the enhanced systems. Every coalition ship suddenly blazed with the same bioluminescent patterns that had once graced her alien skin, their hulls singing with harmonics that spoke of sacrifice and love. The Soul's Pride came alive under Deho's hands, its controls responding to his thoughts as if the ship itself could read his mind. Around him, he could feel Nari's presence in every circuit and conduit. Her consciousness distributed throughout the vessel's hybrid systems like a ghost in the machine. Across the fleet, similar transformations were taking place. Human crews found themselves connected not just to their ships but to each other, their individual determination amplified by Nari's final gift, into something that approached collective consciousness. They fought not as separate vessels but as a single entity, their tactics flowing with the harmony of Veltar thought patterns, guided by human refusal to yield. The tide of battle turned with shocking suddenness. Hegemony ships that had seemed unstoppable began falling to weapons that seemed to anticipate their every move. Coalition vessels damaged beyond hope of survival somehow found the strength to continue fighting, their crews sustained by the echo of Nari's sacrifice. But the true horror of the hegemony's crimes was revealed when the enhanced human ships began liberating the bioneural processors from captured enemy vessels. Thousands of enslaved beings from dozens of species, their consciousness trapped and tormented for the entertainment of their captors. Nari's distributed awareness reached out to each of them, offering comfort and the promise of eventual freedom. The battle raged for 18 hours, longer than any engagement in recorded history. When the surviving hegemony ships finally retreated into hyperspace, they left behind the wreckage of an empire's arrogance. The coalition had achieved the impossible, turning back a force that should have swept them aside like debris. But victory came at a cost that hollowed Deho's soul. In the bio-integration chamber, Nari's body had become a crystalline shell, her life force completely transferred into the fleet's hybrid systems. She was gone, yet somehow still present in every enhanced ship, every modified weapon, every tactical decision that bore the mark of her sacrifice. Admiral Lee found him there hours later, sitting beside the crystalline remains of the woman who had saved human civilization. "The fleet is asking for orders," she said gently. "The hegemony will regroup and return with even larger forces. We need to decide how to proceed." Deho looked up at her, his eyes reflecting the blue glow that now emanated from every surface of the enhanced ship. "We proceed as she would have wanted. We take the fight to them. We liberate every enslaved consciousness, free every world they've conquered, and show the galaxy that some things are worth fighting for even when victory seems impossible. He stood and walked to the viewport, where the stars seemed brighter than before, as if Nari's sacrifice had somehow increased the amount of light in the universe. In the reflection of the transparent aluminum, he could almost see her face, smiling with the same ethereal beauty that had first captured his heart. The enhanced coalition fleet began forming up for the long journey to hegemony space, their hybrid systems humming with harmonics that spoke of love, transcendent and determination eternal. They carried with them the consciousness of a dying species, the stubborn courage of humanity, and the promise that no tyranny, no matter how powerful, could stand forever against the combined force of harmony and hope. Behind them, Titan Base began receiving the first refugees from liberated hegemony worlds, beings who spoke in hushed whispers of the impossible fleet that had appeared from nowhere to break their chains. The galaxy was about to discover that some bonds once forged in love and sacrifice could never be broken by any force in the universe. 5 years after the Battle of Titan, the galaxy had been transformed beyond recognition. The hegemony's empire of enslaved worlds had crumbled beneath the advance of the Coalition Liberation Fleet, their once mighty armadas scattered to the far reaches of space. In their wake, dozens of species emerged from slavery to reclaim their freedom, each one carrying stories of the impossible ships that sang with harmonics of hope. Deho stood on the bridge of the Soul's Pride, now flagship of a fleet that numbered in the thousands. The enhanced vessels had proven capable of reproduction, their hybrid systems teaching new ships the patterns of integration that Nari had died to perfect. Each new vessel carried a fragment of her consciousness, a spark of Veltar harmony combined with human determination that made the impossible seem routine. The bridge crew around him represented a dozen different species, beings who had been liberated from hegemony bio-neural processors and chosen to join the coalition cause. They worked together with the same seamless coordination that Nari had first demonstrated, their different perspectives and abilities, creating solutions that no single species could have achieved alone. Long-range sensors detecting the hegemony remnant fleet in the Andromeda approach vector, reported Lieutenant Kyung-soo, a former slave whose biomechanical implants had been transformed from instruments of oppression into tools of liberation. They're attempting to establish a new base of operations in the satellite galaxy. How many ships? Deho asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Approximately 50 vessels, mostly damaged survivors from previous engagements. Admiral Renatha believes they're planning one final strike before fleeing to dark space. Deho nodded, feeling the familiar presence that had guided him through 5 years of impossible victories. Nari's consciousness existed now as a distributed intelligence throughout the enhanced fleet, her awareness touching every system, every decision, every moment of triumph and tragedy. She spoke to him not in words but in harmonics that resonated in frequencies beyond normal human perception. The final confrontation came in the ruins of the Veltar homeworld, where crystalline cities lay shattered beneath skies that still wept silver tears. The hegemony remnant had chosen this place for their last stand, perhaps believing that the symbolic significance would somehow restore their fading power. But as the coalition fleet emerged from hyperspace above the devastated planet, it became clear that this was not a battle but a reckoning. The enhanced ships moved through the hegemony formation like avenging angels, their weapons reaching out with surgical precision to disable rather than destroy. This was not about revenge but about justice, about offering even their enemies the chance for redemption. The hegemony flagship Dominion's Edge hung dead in space, its bio-neural processors finally silenced after years of inflicting suffering across the galaxy. Deho led the boarding party personally, walking through corridors that reeked of decay and desperation until he reached the command center where the last hegemony commander waited. General Thaxmore was a being of crystalline carapace and multifaceted eyes, one of the original species that had formed the Dominion centuries before. His people had been conquerors long before they encountered the Veltar, but something in his posture suggested that the long war had broken more than just his military power. "You have won," Thaxmore said simply, his translation unit rendering his words in precise coalition standard. "The Dominion is ended, our worlds liberated, our fleets destroyed. What do you intend to do with the survivors?" Deho felt Nari's presence flowing through the ship's systems around them, her consciousness touching the bioneural processors that had once tortured her people. But instead of anger or vengeance, he sensed something else from her distributed awareness, compassion for the suffering that had driven the Dominion to become what it was. "We intend to offer you the same choice we offered every other species," Deho replied. "Join the coalition as equals. Contribute your knowledge and abilities to the common good, and help us build something better than what came before." Thaxmore's multifaceted eyes shifted to study the bioluminescent patterns that flowed across the walls around them. Nari's consciousness made visible in the ship's hybrid systems. "The Veltar girl's spirit? She is here, isn't she? Even after all we did to her people, she offers forgiveness. She offers hope," Deho corrected. "The same hope she showed me when I pulled her from the wreckage of her ship. The belief that even the most impossible gulfs can be bridged by understanding and love." 6 months later, Deho found himself back on Kepler 442b, standing at the site where he had first encountered Nari's crashed vessel. The red sand was the same, still swirling in endless spirals beneath the twin suns, but everything else had changed. A memorial garden now grew here, its crystalline structures singing with the same harmonics that had once graced Veltar cities. Refugees from across the galaxy came to this place to remember what had been lost and to celebrate what had been found. Children of a dozen species played among the singing plants, their laughter creating music that transcended the boundaries between worlds. Former enemies worked side by side to tend the garden, their different abilities combining to create beauty that none could have achieved alone. Dr. Cho, now elderly but still brilliant, approached with a data tablet displaying the latest integration statistics. "The reproduction rate is exceeding all projections," he reported. "Every new ship carries a stronger imprint of the original consciousness. At this rate, we'll have enough enhanced vessels to explore beyond the local galactic group within a generation." Deho nodded but didn't take his eyes off the memorial garden. In the crystalline structures, he could sometimes see reflections that looked almost like Nari's face, smiling with the same ethereal beauty that had first captured his heart. The bioneural matrix she had given him still pulsed with her heartbeat, a constant reminder of the love that had bridged the impossible gulf between their species. "She's still with us," he said quietly. "In every ship we build, every world we liberate, every impossible thing we accomplish because we refuse to accept that it can't be done. That's her real legacy." The garden's harmonic shifted as if responding to his words, and for a moment the entire memorial resonated with frequencies that spoke of love, eternal, and hope unending. Somewhere in the distributed consciousness that flowed through the coalition fleet, Nari's awareness touched his mind with the gentle warmth of recognition. They had done something that no species in galactic history had ever accomplished. They had turned love into a force capable of reshaping the universe itself. And as new ships launched from coalition shipyards carrying fragments of that love to distant stars, the galaxy slowly learned that some bonds, once forged in sacrifice and sealed with hope, could indeed bridge any gulf that the universe might place between them. The last page of the story belonged not to any single species or individual, but to the endless song of harmony and determination that now echoed through space itself. It was a song that spoke of impossible rescues and unlikely romances, of species that chose cooperation over conquest, of love that transcended the boundaries between worlds. It was the song of the future, and it would never end.